Hi! The days are getting longer, and although we are still in winter, it's a good time to start thinking about planting seedlings and preparing for the short gardening season we have here in the north. The USDA Plant Hardiness Zone Map is the standard by which gardeners and growers can determine which plants are the most likely to thrive at any determined location. Siskola is located in southwestern Finland, so on the USDA Hardiness Zone map that would be Zone 5A. In the US, Zone 5A extends across the northern part of the central US, including Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska and Wisconsin. It also reaches all the way to the northwest, including Montana, Wyoming, Northern California, Oregon, Washington and Idaho. Parts of Colorado, Nevada and Alaska also fall under the Zone 5. The map is based on the average annual extreme minimum winter temperature. Zone 5 experiences mild summers and cold winters. This area's short growing season lasts from late spring to mid-fall, with the last frost date falling in early May and the first frost occurring around mid-October. Last year I started my first proper vegetable garden from scratch, and together with my dad we built a fence around it. The garden is 100 square meters or a little over 1,000 square feet. In this video I'm going to share some of my garden plans for this year, specifically what are my goals and what do I want to get out of this year's garden. But before we dive into the future, let's take a short look at the past at some gardening highlights and fails from 2023. In general, I would say that I was extremely lucky with the garden, especially considering it was my first time gardening in a bigger scale. My garden was mostly a success, and my biggest adversity was probably the severe lack of rain that we had in the beginning of the summer. All the rain came instead in the end of the growing season, so that also caused some problems. But I can't complain since we got so many mushrooms as a trade. Since I was not at Siskola to water every day in spring, the drought took my radishes and turnips. I planted them twice, and both times they dried just after sprouting, when they are the most vulnerable. I really love turnips and I like eating them raw, like apples. They are sweet, mild, a tad tart and have a nice crunchy consistency. Turnips are high in fiber and low in calories, so they make a great snack. I would really like to succeed in growing them this year. I also had some trouble with the broccoli because they attracted flea bugs at one point. Luckily, I managed to get rid of them by using vinegar and soot on the leaves. So out of 5 broccolis, I saved 3 and left the last 2 to flower to get some seeds. This year I'm planning on planting at least 10 broccolis, so double up. I also had some trouble with the tomato in the end of the season when it was so rainy. Many tomatoes were still green, but starting to get brown spots on them. I suspected it was tomato blight, so I had to throw out a bunch in the end of the season. I did not have a huge success with the onions either. They never grew very big, even if I started them indoors already in February, probably also partly because of the lack of water. I also forgot to top them off after planting them in the ground, so that might have influenced the growth of the size of the onion bulbs. However, I'm not giving up and I will try even harder again this year, with hopefully some better results. I'm growing long day onions that are suitable for this climate, and I have 3 varieties to try out. I will plant again the quite classic Stuttgarter Riesen, but I also ordered some Globo and yellow sweet Spanish seeds. I also still have some of my last year's tiny red onions left, so I also wanted to experiment by replanting them. I guess it would be like buying an onion start, and should at least give some green onions. It was a shame that last year I never managed to get the corn in the ground in time, although I started them indoors under the grow lights and they looked quite good. Another thing I never got around to planting was the strawberry seedlings that I got from my cousin. I put them in the salad bed in the end of the season, so I wonder if they managed to overwinter there or will I need to buy some more. This is how the plan and placement looks for the time being. I drew it in Illustrator and made a few modifications from last year's plan. One of my priorities this year is to make a place to grow both the corn and the strawberries. I will make a bigger garden bed for both, probably 200 times 285 centimeters or 6.5 times 2.8 feet. This kind of map really helps a visual person like myself to get a better understanding of the placement of the vegetables and an overview of the area. It is also much easier to count how many plants are needed for each bed. For example, in the corn bed I can fit 2 rows with 9 plants each, and in this strawberry bed I can fit 8 plants in each row. I also have 2 metal raised beds with rounded corners that I didn't have time to assemble last year, so they are now included in my plan for this year. I'm planning to place 3 of the rounded metal beds against the south-facing fence like this. One of the rounded beds has soil inside from last season, so I'm hoping it won't be too difficult to empty and move it. I also still have an old chicken coop left that I made into a garden bed, so that might just fit nicely there in the corner. We will have to see. I have a working wood chipper now, so I can get plenty of mulch for all the pathways to suppress the weeds, while at the same time get rid of piles of branches that I have lying around everywhere on the property. My main goal this year is to get a lot of joy in gardening again, while still working on the space itself to get more use of it and fit more produce to grow. I want to plant a little more of everything, especially peas and cucumbers and zucchinis. I was thinking of placing a narrow garden bed against the north-facing fence for peas, but that means getting rid of the pathway. Cucumbers and zucchinis will also have a whole garden bed each dedicated for them, so I should be able to ramp up the zucchinis from 6 to 10 plants and the cucumbers from 3 to 8 or maybe even 10 plants. I want an entire garden bed also for carrots again, accompanied by some onions to deter the carrot flies, and then also one big garden bed for the beetroots again. I also wanted to plant some spinach this year, but I believe they are quite easy to grow, so maybe I would put them under the peas, maybe that's a good place, or any other place I can fit them. They make a great companion plants for most species, as long as it's not next to potatoes, dill or sunflowers. This year I won't be planting that many tomato varieties. I will concentrate on only 3, all of which are cherry tomatoes, so perhaps 10 plants in total. The 3 cherry tomato varieties I'm planting are obviously Sun Gold, but also Super Sweet 100 and the yellow pear-shaped. I definitely won't be using the jute strings I got for the tomato trellis either this year. They decompose and break so easily. When it comes to peppers, I will also plant a bit less this year, for the same reason as the tomatoes, because they don't produce much fruit and take a very long time to grow. I will only plant the Nicaraguan Criolla de Cocina and Italian Jimmy Nardello peppers, which are both sweet varieties, and then the Galician Padron peppers. The Padron peppers are chilies that you pick green, so they grow a little faster and also produce quite well. I also enjoy eating them a lot. I was very happy with last year's herb garden. I got 4 harvests of parsley, plenty of chives, dill, oregano, and a lot of basil propagated from only 1 original plant. I will follow the same recipe this year as well, since it worked so well. When it comes to flowers, my knowledge is quite limited. I don't even know the name of many flowers. I did plant some basic ones for the pollinators last year, and to my surprise, they actually thrived without much fuss. I had marigolds, calendulas, nasturtiums, cornflowers and sunflowers, so probably this year I will have the same ones. I also planted alyssum flowers as a companion plant with the peppers, but they never seeded. I don't want to make it too easy though, so I will be experimenting with growing geraniums from seeds as well. They should have been planted already in January, but I thought that sounded a bit excessive, so I will plant them today instead. Here we are with the geranium experiment. I think I will plant only 4 or 5 plants, but I will put 2 seeds in each container. These flowers we usually call mummonkukka, which means granny's flower, because they used to be growing in every old lady's balcony box. At times like these, it might be a good idea to go for something familiar and nostalgic, like these granny geranium flowers. This year I will also be experimenting with planting seeds and transplanting seedlings according to the phases of the moon. Moon-based planting calendars suggest sowing seeds for crops that yield an above-ground harvest when the moon is increasing, or in other words, going from new moon to full moon. Root crops such as potatoes, onions, beets and carrots should be planted when the moon is waning, between the full moon and the last quarter. This is the time when the moon's gravitational pull decreases slightly and the roots are more likely to develop better by growing downward, or at least this is the theory. I don't know if there's any truth behind planting by following the moon phases, but it doesn't hurt to try, right? And if there's anybody out there who has any experience about the matter or any opinions, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to plant potatoes again this year, but it is actually more expensive to buy the seed potatoes than to get potatoes from the supermarket for a year. I ordered a total of 13 kilograms or 29 pounds with 4 varieties and paid 42 euros, with the post included. So for that amount you can probably get around 30 to 40 kilograms of potatoes in the shop. I will be planting the varieties Yatsi, Annabelle and Colomba again, but instead of the red Rosamunda I had last year, I'm testing the Amadeus variety instead. I will be using the Ruth stout method again and grow them in hay. I have plenty of different zucchini varieties to plant. One of my favorites last year was this Athena polka. It's a yellow courgette and it's quite mild. I really liked it, so I bought 2 in the autumn sale as well, but there is still plenty left here. Then I have Bush Baby, Corcosel, Astra polka, which I also planted last year. And then this year I got another of these Patison Blanc. I don't know if it's the same one as this custard white, but this I planted and it took a really long time to actually produce the fruit. I got a couple in the end of the season, so I guess they take longer to produce. Not sure if these are the same ones or not, or something similar at least. And then I have the Black Beauty and also this diamond. And then I got beetroot as well. This is the red ball I ordered from Poland. But then I remembered that it wasn't actually red ball that I wanted to plant. It was the Detroit 2, which was more round. So I got this one here in Finland as well. And then I ordered the same beans that I had last year. I thought these were really nice. And these television peas. But I also have a whole bag of last year's peas that I gathered from the garden. I have a lot of radishes that are waiting to be planted as well, because I didn't succeed last year, so I have to eat the double this year. And a lot of herbs to put in the herb garden. And dill, I think, is always good to have. And a lot of parsley. I have 2 different varieties here. And then there's thyme, some salad, chamomile I was thinking this year to try as well. I have these cucumbers. I really like this Altai because it didn't have a lot of spikes. And then I'm gonna try a different one called this Cornichon de Paris. Then I have some nice butternut pumpkins and jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. When I saw this, I just had to get it. It's a chickpea. So I don't know if it's similar to growing beans or peas, but I want to try it out. This year I also ordered a lot of flowers for the pollinators. A lot of the typical ones though, but I know they work, so let's go with those. But I also have some that I took myself from the flowers. My seed hole is a big mess. So I think I'm gonna finish this video now by starting to organize this a little bit. I have this nice box where I can put everything inside. I hope you have a good gardening season and let me know what are your favorite things to grow. See you again next week. Bye bye.